Welcome to the LLCR Chicago Luxury Apartment Market Update. Damn, that feels awesome to say with all of you here. I'm Chris Fay, the Director of Operations for Luxury Living Chicago Realty. To say we're excited to host this event today would be a total understatement. Having been at LLCR for just about 5 years, I've had the opportunity to be a part of all sorts of amazing growth. Hosting this event, it marks yet another milestone moment in our company's history. From Aaron, Amy, my fellow exec team members, and I laying out the vision and assisting on executing, our marketing and PR team creating this spectacular event from idea to launch to today, our ops team creating and maintaining our constantly evolving LLCR UX and tech stack. It houses the data machine that we have for you today. And finally, our leasing management and agent and broker base. They not only provide the best in service in the industry, but they understand the value of the data and insight that they contribute rather than just simply using our great tools. So from all of us, thank you to everyone that has helped us get up to this point and everyone on this call that's sharing in this moment. All right, given the virtual setting, before we get started, I just want to take a quick second to go over a few house rules, or as we say internally, tips and tricks for success. First off, this is interactive. While most of you are muted, we strongly encourage you to turn on your cameras. We want to see your smiling faces. We also are encouraging you to use the Zoom emoji reactions. They're down on the right on your Zoom toolbar. It's really simple. When you hear something that resonates with you, that you like, or that you just feel strongly about, pick an emoji and live your best life. So let's all try that now. Test it out. Awesome. All right, next up, if you had any trouble with that first one, then this applies to you. Help desk. If you have any technical difficulties during the event at all, we got you. Email events@luxurylivingchicago.com. Our team's on it and we're ready to help. Again, that's events, plural, @luxurylivingchicago.com. Finally, number 3, be patient. As with everything during the pandemic, we have to be ready to pivot at a moment's notice. We have over, let's check it right now, we have over 240 people on this call right now, and that number keeps on growing. If the internet starts to drag or we need to pivot because of some crazy Zoom bomber, or my dog Taco, who's being really calm right now, decides to jump in, we may have to cut video. So it's not the goal, but as 2020 so graciously has taught us, expect the unexpected. All right, now that we've got the rules out of the way, I want to share a little bit about LLCR and our schedule for today. Luxury Living Chicago Realty. We're in our 14th year. We've built a diversified business, including development consulting, marketing and branding, brokerage and development, leasing and sales. What you see on this image is what we like to call our 3 uniques. We've been hired by developers and owners to exclusively lease over 40 apartment buildings since 2013. We've won awards for apartment marketing and consulting, including Best Website in 2019. And at the core of what we're doing, we're providing the perfect combination of leasing velocity while maximizing revenue for our clients. This next slide shows all of the properties we've leased and marketed since 2013. Each of these circles represents the learning and expertise we've gained because of the privilege of representing such incredible clients and incredible properties. So for today, we have 3 things we really want you to take away from this event. First is learn something new. We all come to these types of things to learn. Whether you've been in the business for 50 years, or this is the first time you're hearing anything about the Chicago luxury apartment market, there's always something new to learn, or if at the very least, connect with that info in a new way. As we like to say, I mean, come on, guys, knowledge is power. All right, next one, appreciate the community. Many of our speakers and panelists will discuss the importance of community today. It makes total sense. We all now have a shared collective experience of living through a pandemic. Community has never been more important, so embrace it. And finally, share the message. This is one moment with lots of valuable information. When you leave here, we want you to share this message. Share it with your colleagues, your clients, your friends, your family, anybody that you think would benefit from better understanding the Chicago luxury apartment market. So we've got the rules, we've got the goals, agenda. Awesome. Today's agenda is a lot like our process at LLCR. This agenda is based on 4 of the key data sets we use daily: industry data, exclusive and brokerage data, renter perspective, and developer perspective data. In just a second, I'll introduce Aaron Galvin, our CEO and founder. He'll share what I promise you is a dynamic narrative of the current Chicago luxury apartment market. Following that, Aaron's keynote, we'll get that out of the way, and our Director of Strategy, Mark Zimke, will share just some of our exclusive property leasing data from 2019 and 2020. Right after that, we'll dive into a one-on-one showcase of the Chicago renter perspective. Our Director of Residential Rentals, Tristan Hyman, and one of Tristan's multi-season clients, Megan Murata, will take us through. And finally, we'll end the day with a panel featuring some of downtown Chicago's top developers. We've got Hines, we've got Related Midwest, and we've got Fifield. So you know the rules, you know the goals, and you know where we're going. So let's do this. I'm excited to welcome Aaron Galvin, CEO and founder of Luxury Living Chicago Realty, to take over. Aaron has been at the forefront of the luxury Chicago apartment market for nearly 20 years. He's become the go-to expert on all things luxury multifamily in Chicago. I'm not kidding, this guy has a crystal ball. With all of the tech we've built to track all of the data, somehow we still can do a blind test with Aaron and he's always spot on. And I'm like, that's not a script, that's not, no joke. We play this game on a regular basis. So having worked with Aaron for 5 years or so, I can tell you, Aaron is a true visionary. Everything from boardroom presentations to late night strategy pizza sessions. It's easy to see why his passion, enthusiasm, and leadership is so infectious, and how Luxury Living Chicago Realty has become the company it is today. Ladies, gentlemen, Aaron Galvin.
Wow. Thank you, Chris. That was awesome. You've been such an incredible ambassador for my vision, and we're so grateful for your contribution to this company and to the industry at large. As you can see from the many, many faces that are on this screen, there's a real interest in what's happening in the Chicago luxury apartment market. But what's important to note is not only the number of people who are here, which is now up to 255, but who's here today. And to all on this call, I really want to take a moment to express my sincere gratitude for your contributions to the Chicago multifamily community. So first, I see a lot of my clients and partners. You are the ones responsible for envisioning, designing, building, financing, and ultimately delivering so many of the beautiful apartment buildings that grace our skyline and fill our neighborhoods. There have been over 25,000 new luxury apartments delivered in the last 8 years. So much blood, sweat, and tears goes into making a back of a napkin idea into a reality. So thank you for all that you do. To my industry colleagues, property managers, real estate agents, investment sale brokers, and leasing agents, you are the frontline workers of this industry. You are the people who find creative and innovative ways to market, lease, manage, and sell these luxury apartment buildings. A special shout out to everybody who masked up and kept the train running last year and always providing exceptional service for our renters and clients. To the renters and buyers who've joined us today, our brokerage clients, thank you for entrusting LLCR with your home search. Finding a new home is not an easy process. It's likely the most financially significant decision in your life. It's where memories are made and the dream of living downtown Chicago is realized. We thank you for trusting us with your home selection. And to the many family, friends, and supporters of LLCR, we could not do this without you. Thank you for your continued understanding of what it takes for us to provide the highest level of service. And finally, to my LLCR team, there are over 35 LLCR team members on this call today. I continue to be humbled by your commitment, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity to both lead and learn from you. Together, we make this happen. So as I think about this audience and the key message today, I want to focus on community, this community. The pandemic has brought us together in a unique way. Whether you're a developer, industry colleague, renter, or anyone else, we've all experienced similar feelings of fear, uncertainty, confusion, and now hope as we live through a pandemic. As we move forward, it's going to take listening, empathy, respect, courage, grit, and continued patience to restore the downtown luxury apartment market to prominence. And I'm going to share with you today how we're going to do it. But first, I'm going to tell you a quick story that took place in the summer of 1992. As many of you know, I'm originally from Shaker Heights, a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. Say what you will about Cleveland sports teams, but it was a great place to grow up, not unlike the suburbs of Chicago. As a 12-year-old boy, I remember visiting Chicago for the first time. It was one of the first trips after my parents' divorce, and something I was very much looking forward to. We were staying at the Westin Hotel on Michigan Avenue with a view of Water Tower Place. I remember reading the Fodor's travel guide, so I would be best prepared. For those on this call who don't know what Fodor's is, it was what you read to research a city before there was an internet. Even as a kid, preparation was something very important for me. I'll never forget that first turn up Lakeshore Drive from the south and seeing the glistening lake to the right, the high-rise buildings to the left. It was everything a summer day in Chicago can be, and it was pure magic for 12-year-old Aaron. I remember going to Chicago Chop House for the biggest steak dinner, Gino's East for deep dish pizza, and catching a White Sox game against the visiting Cleveland Indians. I also remember shopping on Michigan Avenue and Oak Street because that's where my dad wanted to buy a new suit for my bar mitzvah that was happening the following year. And I even remember that a yellow puzzle piece necktie the store owner gave me for being so patient. It was one of my first lessons in the value of extraordinary customer service. And while I can't say in that moment, I knew I'd move to Chicago 2 weeks after graduating from Miami of Ohio, start dating my future wife at 22 years old, live in 6 different luxury apartments in Lincoln Park, the Gold Coast, and River North, and at the age of 27, start a business that would eventually lease over 15,000 apartments and employ over 50 people. There is no doubt that that trip, that moment, that experience contributed to the love and passion I have for this great city. So why is this story relevant to our conversation today? It's relevant because over the last year, downtown Chicago has been under siege. First, it was the deafening silence of a stay-at-home order, leaving the city desolate just as the snow was starting to melt and the excitement of spring was upon us. Then it was the eye-opening protests, bringing light to systemic racism, a watershed moment not only in Chicago, but in our entire country. Unfortunately, many of those peaceful protests turned into looting, ransacking, and destruction. Watching that same very Michigan Avenue, River North, and Gold Coast that I first saw as a 12-year-old boy, lived in during my formative years, and many of us on this call depend on for our careers and livelihoods, was devastating. People nationwide were questioning if downtown living could survive such tumultuous disruption. And all of this created a perfect storm for unprecedented rent drops. Starting in July, we saw a significant decrease in rents and occupancy in our industry, the likes many of us never thought possible. We were paralyzed, scared, confused, and uncertain at what could come from this moment of reckoning. There certainly weren't many 12-year-old kids coming to Chicago this summer creating positive memories. For all intents and purposes, sentiment was that Chicago may never recover. Well, I am here to tell you unequivocally and with resounding confidence that Chicago, and more importantly, the downtown luxury apartment market, is already rebounding. And with a collective effort from this community, we can be stronger than ever. So let's talk about some data. And let's start with macro trends. In looking at this macro trends to better understand how luxury products and services perform as compared to a more standard product coming out of a recession. The chart you see on your screen shows a comparison of the S&P Global Luxury Goods Index on the green line and the S&P 500 on the black line. To provide context, the Luxury Goods Index includes the top 80 publicly traded luxury goods companies. This includes Tesla, Nike, Louis Vuitton, and Estee Lauder, for example. The S&P 500 includes companies such as Amazon, Bank of America, Coca-Cola, Facebook. These are all great companies, but definitely a cachet to the companies in the luxury index. As you can see, the luxury trend line increased exponentially coming out of the last recession from 2009 to 2012. Also important to note, the spread between these two indices has grown exponentially. Luxury goods have a history of rebounding faster than the general market. If history is any indication, luxury products are in for a fun ride over the next 3 to 5 years, and luxury rentals are no exception. So bringing this a little closer to home, this chart shows a similar comparison in the Chicago Class A apartment market. The black line shows the average gross price per square foot for the entire Class A market since 2013 on a quarterly basis. The gray line shows the average gross per square foot for the top 10 highest price rental properties during that same period of time. Similar to the macro luxury goods market we just discussed, the spread between the top 10 luxury properties and the larger Class A data set has been growing over time. For example, in Q1 2013, the spread between these two data sets was only 35 cents or 13%. But looking at Q3 2020, the spread grew to 86 cents, which is the equivalent of a 30% premium. This is the largest spread we've seen in 8 years. So while the market decreased overall, luxury properties fared much better than even the standard Class A. Taking this a step further, in looking at the dotted trend line, this shows the top 3 highest price rental properties. This is what we refer to as the ultra luxury rental set. You can see the spread grows even wider, and those properties performed even better during the pandemic. In fact, the top 3 properties were still at $417 per square foot in Q3 2020 on a gross basis, when the overall Class A market dropped to $289 per square foot. That's a 42% premium for those properties as compared to the average Class A rental. Here's the big takeaway. Renters will pay for the best of the best. And even in a pandemic, this held true. So as we advise future developers on what to build moving forward, we are most bullish on the ultra luxury rental market. In fact, I project this spread to continue to grow over the next few years. There is minimal supply coming to downtown Chicago, and those who are able to secure financing and take the risk are going to win. In fact, by 2023, I would not be surprised to see the newest properties delivering at or above pre-pandemic levels. And by 2024, we will see a $450 plus per square foot building. This market is coming back strong. A special thank you to Ron DeVries and Gail Listner from Integra Realty Resources, IRR, for sharing some of this historical data. It's truly a testament to your collaborative spirit. So let's talk about what's happening right now and why I have so much optimism for recovery. This chart shows the net rent in our exclusive portfolio for the first 2 months of 2021. This is the rent price that people are paying after concessions or any free rent. This data is hot off the presses and is week by week data for the first 2 months of the year. As a benchmark goal, we set our initial target at $2,500 net. When we have a week where within our portfolio, the average net rent is back to $2,500, that will be a huge win. The first thing to note, and it's not even on the chart, is actual leasing velocity. In only 60 days, we have leased 550 units. To put that in perspective, in January and February last year, we leased 284 units, and the market was very strong. This was before the pandemic. This is a 93% increase this year. The chart shows a low of 1858 in the first week of the year. Since that time, we have increased net rents a cumulative 24%, with last week at $2,328 average. For renters, the time is now to lease an apartment because rents are going up quickly. For all others, this is such a welcome departure from the last 6 months and provides every opportunity to incrementally increase rent prices for the next 90 to 120 days as the spring leasing season really kicks into high gear. So now that we've established historical evidence of increasing rents in the current market, the question I get asked most often is who is renting these luxury apartments? And with significant rent decreases in the last 6 months of 2020, has the demographic shifted the socioeconomic composition of these properties? On paper, the answer is no. Creditworthiness, income levels, previous residents, and even the percentage of people relocating to Chicago has remained unchanged in our data from 2019 to 2020. This lack of variance is a great thing and speaks to the long-term stability of our renter base. For the most part, these are renters who maintained employment through the pandemic, were able to work remotely, and are most likely to have increased compensation and disposable income as the economy recovers. These are the qualified renters we have always had in these properties. However, there's one dynamic that has materially changed, and that's the number of new renters living in each building. Because of the increased vacancy in so many of our properties and subsequent rent decreases, there are simply more newly moved in renters in nearly all of our properties right now. These people are moving from the neighborhoods, suburbs, out of state. They also move from other properties downtown. Regardless, these people rented during the pandemic and are much more accepting of the current constraints, such as amenities on a reservation system and longer wait time for elevators. These new renters are gold because they're excited about living in your properties. And we need to keep them with this same warm and fuzzy feeling they have right now. This will certainly help create harmony today as we continue to navigate this pandemic. But the care, compassion, and collaboration we put in now will have a material impact on retention efforts in the future. So as you can see, there's a clear path towards success and recovery. At LLCR, we promise to do our part in helping fuel this recovery. This conference is that first step. What comes next to continue the momentum in creating an aligned community? Every day, we are providing more sophisticated and strategic market intelligence for our partners. Our developers are going to continue to have the benefit of our relationship. This includes extraordinary amounts of data and strategy to help navigate this constantly evolving landscape. Our exclusive leasing portfolio consists of various types of Class A properties, from the newest, most upscale lease-ups to stabilized properties and even condo deconversions. In addition, we are currently consulting for a number of developments on the verge of securing financing for future skyline-changing ultra-luxury multifamily in Chicago. There is nothing more important than providing the highest level of service for our clients and this community. Market intelligence is the key. Further, we are now in the process of rolling out new products focused on renter feedback, reputation management, and mobile-first technology to ensure the renter experience continues to improve. Stay tuned for more from LLCR as we work to provide even more for this community and our clients. Thank you again for your time, engagement, and support of this company and the downtown luxury Chicago apartment market. Hopefully, this talk has provided context for my optimism and instilled a stronger sense of community as we think about all parties involved. We are all humans coexisting and feeding off of each other's energies. Let's honor that as we navigate the return to prominence for the Chicago luxury apartment market. Thank you. I will now turn the spotlight over to our Director of Leasing Strategy, Mark Zimke, for our LLCR data review. For those who've had the privilege of working with Mark, his insight and unique perspective on data analysis is like no other in the industry. Over the last few years, I would argue that nobody has priced more luxury apartments or analyzed more luxury data than Mark. Mark, take it away.
Thanks, Aaron. And thank you everyone for attending today. This is quite an opportunity for me to present our internal data like this. I presented to our company several times, but this is the first time I've been able to show this to a larger audience outside of our organization. So I'm hoping it's compelling as to you as it is for us. So let's get into it. First, a quick note on the presentation. Anything you see in an orange square, circle, or bar chart is related to 2019. Anything in purple relates to 2020. So the first slide shows the number of units within our exclusive leasing portfolio for the last 2 years. As you can see, we are tracking roughly 3,700 units both years. So the data is quite comparable. Ultimately, this data set provides a very comprehensive sample size of the greater downtown luxury market, including properties in 12 different neighborhoods throughout Chicago. So let's talk about seasonality. According to a 2018 Zillow market study, Chicago has the most seasonality of any apartment market in the country. While the old adage used to be, everyone moves in May and October, well, that has long been irrelevant and is no longer accurate. In fact, the leasing season has started earlier and earlier each year. This chart shows the number of gross monthly applications our portfolio received over the last 2 years. Not surprisingly, there is a significant variance between 2019 and 2020 when it comes to seasonality. 2019 looks like it has for years, while 2020, well, that's a different story. One detail to point out is how strong leasing was the first quarter of 2020. The downtown Chicago luxury market was about to see its best year ever. The busy leasing season in 2020, which is typically as predictable as it gets, was anything but predictable. April was definitely a struggle as the world came to a halt, but if you look at May and June, they were solid. We found our groove on remote leasing, and there really was pent-up demand for people wanting to move to Chicago once the stay-at-home order lifted in early June. Then, at a time where we would expect leasing velocity to continue, we ran into some trouble in July, but this was no ordinary year. For owners, this was the start of a decreasing market, and renters were delaying decisions, waiting for the bottom, which then ended up having a substantial effect on renewals and retention, a perfect storm. It caused a paralysis. Our director of residential rentals, Tristan Hyman, who you will be hearing from next, would tell stories about advising his clients to act quickly because he's never seen rents this low. Then the rent would drop $100 the following day. It was like trying to figure out when to buy GameStop. This ended up having an adverse effect on broker credibility, but no one really knew how revenue management software would adjust when there was literally no historical data to reference. And what we saw was a race to the bottom. By August through the remainder of the year, application volume was exponentially higher than 2019, and really any time in history for that period of time. It was a strange year for sure, but the net result was a lot of leasing and great momentum heading into 2021. So here we'll discuss demographics. One of the questions we get quite often is, where are people coming from? And answers may surprise you, especially the number of people relocating to Chicago. First, the number of people who currently live downtown and simply move to another apartment remained relatively unchanged at right around 60%. These are people who are committed to Chicago, and many of whom signed long-term leases in 2020. While 2019 saw about 40% of all leases come from relocating residents, in 2020, we actually increased that number to 42%. So contrary to popular belief, people are still very much moving to downtown Chicago. When looking at those relocations, 4 of the top 5 states stayed exactly the same: Texas, New York, Michigan, and California. And also considered relocation, we saw slightly more people coming from the suburbs than last year. Many of those renters moved out early in the pandemic to their parents' basements or childhood bedrooms and have since moved back downtown. And as Aaron had mentioned earlier, many of these renters are new to luxury urban living with deals that were too good to pass up. We expect Illinois number to continue to grow for the remainder of the year. And once offices really reopen in early 2022, the out-of-state traffic will increase and we'll be ready. Another interesting metric we track is the time that a renter first views an apartment to the time they start their lease. The most important takeaway from this slide is that renters who are moving in the first 4 months of the year usually start their search very early, in many cases at the end of the prior year. This metric is actually one area we did not see a lot of variance between 2019 and 2020, other than the midsummer months when people were taking their sweet time. This is largely due to the fluctuations in rent that started in July and extended into October. More than ever before, renters were applying the same month they needed to move to get the best possible deal. They got several months free rent, along with free parking, storage, waived fees, and probably a couple pedicures. We have always advocated for as many lease expirations in the first half of the year to capture the most demand. This was no different in 2020 and likely won't change over time. One key indicator we watch very closely is website traffic. While the perception is that the winter months are slow, we see significant increases in website traffic, which is a leading indicator for future rentals that occur in Q1 and early Q2. We have always defined the busy season as when renters are looking for an apartment, not when they move in. So we've been alluding to rent prices, so let's dig into the data. There is a lot to unpack here, but overall, we saw the market decrease from its height in Q2 2019 to a low in November 2020. Then, fortunately, it started to rebound in December 2020, and as Aaron mentioned, we are seeing significant increases in early 2021. If we had another 20 minutes, we could analyze this slide a million different ways. But for today, we're just going to focus on 1-bedrooms and smaller unit types that took the biggest hit during the pandemic. Also, the way we have analyzed this is the way renters view apartments in price brackets, not by price per square foot. So starting with 1-bedrooms, seen on the black line, there is a lot of variance from the top of the market to the bottom, but also periods of stability. In the first half of 2019, the most common 1-bedroom luxury renter was seeing rents in the $2,500 to $3,000 range. And to see 1-bedrooms renting over $3,000 was quite common. However, once August 2019 hit, there was an ever-present seasonal drop. In the chart, if you look at 2019 through July 2020, you see 9 months of nearly identical net rents, hovering right at that $2,500 price point. Then you see the downward slope through November 2020, 4 very stressful months. The challenges really started in July 2020, and by the time we got to November, we saw Class A luxury 1-bedrooms renting in the $1,500 to $1,800 range, which in the summer of 2019 is lower than a studio would rent for. The good news is we ended the year strong, getting much closer to that $2,000 range. 1-bedrooms are on the rise and should continue to climb. Studio and convertible trend lines really run in tandem. This is a unit type that was hit hard during the pandemic, as the typical studio renter could now easily afford a true 1-bedroom apartment, and studios simply sat vacant. So the rents needed to come down so low to lure a completely different renter to the downtown luxury market. This really was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for renters to see sub $1,000 net rents on studios in a few downtown luxury apartment buildings. That is something we haven't seen in over 15 years. The last 3 months of 2020 has taught us that when we find a price range that works, we need to stick with it for a period of time. Very few smaller unit types leased in August through September, largely because the pricing was all over the board. By stabilizing these smaller unit types, we were able to get some quality absorption. This is a price-sensitive renter and one most likely to struggle again if prices climb too fast, especially because so many are still working from home. So now that we've reviewed net rent, let's dig into how we got to those net rents. Concessions. The 2019 chart looks like a typical historical concession path, minimal in the first half of the year and slightly elevated in the second half. 2020 started the same, and as discussed, was on track all the way through June. However, the last 6 months of the year had heavy concessions, as high as 3 to 4 months free in some cases. And while it seemed like we hit the peak in Q4, it was actually August where the most concessions were offered in our portfolio. After a challenging July, in the heart of busy leasing season, we knew August was going to be important, like make or break. Mid-August saw our most aggressive concessions and in turn, some of our busiest leasing weeks of the year. However, nearly 50% of our leases in August were 18 months or longer, and that continued through September. The graphic at the bottom shows the average discount as a percentage of 1 month's rent by quarter for 2020. Obviously, concessions increased throughout the year, but what is interesting about this data is that while net rents decreased significantly in Q4, our average concession only increased by 1.34%. This is largely due to long-term leases and the benefit of being able to spread a concession across a longer lease period. So let's talk about long-term leases and their importance in the market. This chart shows the percentage of leases in our portfolio signed for 18 months or longer. In a normal year, we advocate for at least 25% of leases in a given property to be long-term leases. Allocating lease term with this strategy accomplishes 3 things. It increases the effective rent because a concession is being spread across a longer period of time. We saw the benefit of that on the last slide at the bottom when comparing Q3, Q4. It increases net operating income because there is less turnover and lower marketing costs. And finally, it moves a meaningful percentage of lease expirations into the following calendar year. The third point is super important, and here's why. The fewer units you have up for renewal, the fewer units come back online to lease. In turn, your occupancy remains high and you have less turnover costs and you can charge more for rent. We are putting our thumb on the scale of supply and demand. If you have a 500 unit building, it's much easier when only 75% of those units are up for renewal versus 100%. We have always subscribed to this strategy, but never more so than in 2020. The moment we saw rents starting to drop in July and the market offering significant concessions on 12 to 14 month leases, which puts expirations in Q4 2021, we kicked into high gear on long-term leases because we understood the long-term impact. We did this for 2 reasons. Number 1, with the uncertainty of the continued pandemic, we do not expect a sustained pricing recovery until spring of 2022. In turn, we wanted to limit exposure in the second half of 2021 for our clients. And number 2, with a narrative of urban flight, we wanted to provide evidence and confidence of renters' long-term outlook on downtown Chicago. With this strategy, we increased our long-term leases from 28% to 48% in Q3 year over year and doubled the number of long-term leases executed in the second half of the year. This was great for occupancy in 2020 and fueled momentum heading into 2021. But the greater impact comes later. In Q4 2021, the end of this year, our clients have less than 5% of units expiring. Again, looking back at our 3,700 total units, there were only 185 units with expirations in Q4 2021, when the market is at its lowest point. And all of those long-term leases will be up for renewal in the spring of 2022, when the market will have recovered and both renewal pricing and new lease pricing will be exponentially higher. Our agility and foresight to manage lease expirations may be our single most important contribution to leasing efforts in 2020. All of our developer clients are poised for success in the coming years. I will now turn it back over to Chris to continue with the event. Thank you all very, very much for listening.
Thanks so much, Mark. Thanks, Aaron, too. So for some perspective for the rest of you guys, all that information that Mark and Aaron just shared is literally just the tip of the iceberg of what the LLCR tech stack that we've built in-house allows us to track on a daily basis. So thanks for letting me nerd out on that little perspective fact for a sec. All right, so next up, I'm pleased to introduce Tristan Hyman, our Director of Residential Rentals. Over the last 10 years, Tristan has personally represented more luxury Chicago renters than anyone in the business. He's on it 24/7, working directly with renters as they make one of the most important financial decisions they'll make in a given year, deciding on their next home. Today, Tristan is interviewing one of his multi-season clients, Megan Murata. Tristan and Megan have worked together 4 consecutive seasons, and that's just one example to simply say, this dude knows his shit. Tristan, it's all you.
Aw, thanks, Chris, for those kind words. I appreciate that. So, well, hello and welcome to the Luxury Renter Perspective. I am Tristan Hyman, Director of Residential Rentals at Luxury Living Chicago Realty, and I am joined right here with one of my VIP clients, Megan Murata. So, hello, Megan.
Hi.
So conceptually, as we've learned thus far in this tutorial, this Zoom, we know who the luxury renters are from Mark's insights and Aaron's data, but now we have, obviously, Megan's here in the flesh, so call it the more interactive portion of this event. Yay! As the virtual hand claps go for all the people muted. So let's talk about the experience in finding an apartment during a pandemic, how it was affected and it's different from its previous years through your eyes. So Megan, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you living now? And how many times have you worked with luxury living?
Like Tristan said, good afternoon. My name is Megan Murata. I currently live at Gallery on Wells, and I have lived in Chicago for 4 years, and I have worked with Tristan and luxury living for 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. So I guess that makes you my VIIPs.
4 eyes.
Love it. 4 eyes. I love it. So Megan, since this is our fourth luxury apartment that I helped you find in Chicago, what is the biggest difference that you've noticed between finding an apartment pre-pandemic versus one during the pandemic?
Pre-pandemic, obviously, Tristan would pack my day full of seeing places in person, which is what I prefer. But post-pandemic, rightfully so, there were extra safety precautions. So instead of doing the full day tour, we did a little bit of legwork electronically and then kind of narrowed things down from there to see I think we saw 2 places in person. So.
Yep. And when did you end up moving?
I moved the first weekend of November. I had the opportunity, thankfully, with my last building, which was the Artist, that I was able to extend my lease. I think they offered like 1, 3, or 6 month. And I was working in Michigan, like many people who left the city during stay at home. So I opted for a 6 month just because I didn't want to move during the pandemic. And I wanted to be in a better position to see a place in person, since that's like my number one thing when I'm looking at a place. So I did a 6 month and then ultimately moved first weekend of November, that really ridiculous hot weekend in November.
Yeah. So in terms of, like, again, as Mark said, trying to time the market out like, GameStop. You actually literally did time it out perfectly. So like November was the ultimate high point for you as a renter and the low point for the market. And yeah, I am still hearing it to this day, even earlier, just a few hours ago, with new prospects hearing how their friends got 3 months free rent, 2 months free, all the, free TVs and all that stuff. But obviously, as we learned, that time is kind of coming towards an end. So I guess, I know you said you considered about renewing for that 6 months. After that 6 months, did you think about continuously staying at the artist, or why did you ultimately decide to move this year?
I did think about extending for a full 12-month. I think they offered me 2 free months to extend, but I think with everybody during the pandemic, there were 2 things that I was looking for in a new spot, which was, room to work from home, since I'm 100% now work from home. And then also having outdoor space that's right at my access. Now I have 2 balconies, and before I didn't really have that outdoor space. We had the shared outdoor space, which was nice, but I wanted to be able to just like enjoy my cup of coffee, just standing outside for a bit if I wanted to. And so we checked both boxes with my new spot. So
yeah, I think I remember, obviously the outdoor space was one of your biggest must-haves, and still across this pandemic, everyone has been just begging for that private outdoor space,
Right.
and it really is tried true. And you're kind of an anomaly in the sense that you have a 1-bedroom literally with 2 balconies.
right. Yeah.
Trivia quiz: who out there knows that building, that layout? Well, obviously Megan said it, so spoiler alert. But anyways, if you know that layout, you know what I'm talking about. It's a very special one. So I guess talk to me about the overall kind of process, like how when we first got connected 4 years ago. Tell us maybe more about that process, how we got connected.
Sure. Yeah. So 4 years ago, I had an opportunity to move to Chicago and visited a bunch of times, but now I didn't have a bunch of friends here. So didn't really have an outlet for, who to reach out to in terms of finding a spot. And, with, getting a new job, I had, I think, 3 weeks to find a spot. And I did a quick Google search, obviously everyone does. And it was daunting. There was so much information out there, and I just didn't know what was a good spot. I needed some inside knowledge, and I went on Yelp, love Yelp. And I don't even know what I put in my search, but luxury living popped up. I put in a query on the site. And that evening, Tristan called me and did kind of his initial introduction and got all of my must-haves. And again, I really thought that this was just like a shot in the dark. I thought it was a scam, and turns out it was not. Tristan is still with me today, 4 years, probably will be next year when I move. So that was my experience. It was great to have somebody do all the legwork for me and take the stress out of an already stressful situation of relocating to a city.
Oh, well, thank you, Megan.
Of course.
Yeah. So you bring up a kind of a good point. I know you kind of jokingly said, is this a scam? Like, is this too good to be true? And it's kind of funny that you kind of say that, because obviously all the rental markets across the country are so different. Like I spoke to literally 2 clients today from New York City relocating to Chicago. And I was like, take your experience, literally what you know, and literally throw it out the window. Chicago is completely different. I'm here to help. And yeah, it's like, so pretty much in a nutshell, yes, we are indeed a free service to you as to renters, in which we are compensated for our efforts like a traditional real estate transaction where the seller pays the broker fees. In this case, it's the landlord's buildings or most of the people on this Zoom conference. Thanks, guys. But overall, the apartment hunting process can be very, very overwhelming for a lot of individuals. And the consultative level of service that we provide with the clients, the understanding the market, the relationships we build with the clients, but ultimately too with the on-site leasing teams at each building, can really make a very efficient, fun process for everyone involved, and stress-free. Yay! So now, Megan, our process obviously over the past year was quite different compared to, say, my other kind of new clients. Just in general, because we have that established history. So I'll just kind of give the viewers just a little bit of what it would be typically like on a day of just you inquired literally right now, hi, I'm needing an apartment, and I give you a call. So I'll be really kind of brief because obviously these calls can take forever, but just, you know, but essentially, as I tell my clients, it really just kind of comes down to three main ingredients: full transparency, good communication, and information. When you have all these three things kind of involved, it really, like I said, just kind of makes that very easy, fun, stress-free, and efficient process for everyone involved. Ultimately, what I like to do, and we kind of start on that information layer. So this COVID process, we kind of switched and altered, like, as you said, the first time was like, literally, I'm coming to Chicago, and we literally spent the full day of tours. This year, it's been more of a digital upfront information overload, and then just kind of sifting through. So I tell all my clients, it's like, bring it, like, we're just going to start on a big macro scale. Every building has its own personality and vibe, just like every individual is a snowflake. And we're just going to quickly hone in on the detailed specifics. Once we kind of do that, I typically schedule video calls, just like what we're doing right now with my clients. Understand, get their feedback, overall thoughts and findings, questions they have, of course, because they always have questions. And literally, because I've been doing this for 10 years, we just go line by line of each of the properties, provide that hyper-focused level of intangible knowledge to help make these prospects really knowledgeable and just more comfortable too. Like, you know, as we know, the majority of the year was all virtual as it was. So being able to have that relationship rapport is very, very monumental. And you know, once that kind of happens towards the later part where buildings started opening up, we would set up the virtual tours of the exact apartments. And then of those top 5, maybe see like the top 1, 2, or 3 options. So, but anyways, let's get back to you, Megan, because you're the star of the.
Oh, wow, I feel so special.
So what is the most important part to you this year for your apartment search? So.
Well, yeah, my lease ends end of March. I think that kind of the same thing as this year is just, well, I guess end of last year is just balcony, outdoor space, nice amenities. I mean, I moved from a building that didn't have a pool. And the first 2 years I did have a pool, and then the third I didn't. So coming back to, you know, not much to do during COVID, all my friends at pools, and I'm just sitting here inside, you know, that was important. So probably an amenities building, outdoor space that's in my, you know, close to my apartment, and then space for work from home. So
yeah,
pretty much the same.
Yeah, pretty much the same. Just the high-rise lifestyle.
Just a new space to make my own. That's also another one.
Yeah. So I guess a good question next would be, obviously, since with our relationship, you've experienced both pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Right.
How would you alter the apartment finding process kind of in a post-COVID world?
Post-COVID, I would welcome the opportunity to go back to just kind of seeing a bunch of places. I love to look at buildings. I love to see the space. And so for me, it would just be a jam-packed day, take a day off work and see, I don't know, 8 to 10 places and make a decision at the 11th hour, maybe. I don't know.
Let's have some fun.
Right, exactly. For me, it is fun. So
it is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I know it can be very stressful for a lot, but like, you know, this is just a fun, exciting new chapter in life that you get to be a part of. And especially as Aaron kind of mentioned early on, like, these are ultra luxury apartments in the most central neighborhoods in the city. So you're doing something right. You know, it's going to be a good process to do all right. Yeah. But I guess in terms of working with LLCR and myself, what has been your greatest benefit? And you know, I'm not gonna be offended, but would you ever try to find an apartment on your own in the future?
Oh, probably not. I find extreme benefit. Obviously, Tristan's track record with me is 4 for 4. So obviously I see an extreme benefit with working with him. I think as the years go by, it becomes easier to work. It becomes fun to get together and see places, and for you to do all the legwork and have relationships with the buildings, and, you know, price out everything, and you kind of, you know the types of places I want to see. That's kind of invaluable to me. So I probably wouldn't, Tristan.
Oh, thank you. So I know you kind of briefed up on it a little bit earlier in this interview, but what's it like living in a luxury apartment during the pandemic?
It's been okay. I don't think that, before I would kind of participate in building events. Virtual events, I haven't really been participating in, only because my day to day is virtual and I kind of just need a break from screen time. I mean, and we don't do a ton here, but the virtual stuff I'm not really doing. But I do follow a lot on Instagram, and they seem like other buildings are giving out little giveaways and trying to make things fun, which is good. But
Yep. So looking on into now, obviously this seminar has been kind of more of like what's looking onto the future, brighter, light, warmer weather. What are you most excited about within your building currently once we kind of get back to normal?
Sure. Well, I'm lucky enough to be on the amenities floor, which some maybe people think would be a con. It's such a pro for me. The grills are right there, the pool's right there. So just enjoying the outdoor space, and this summer will be key for me. So looking forward to it. And today has been gorgeous. So it's been a nice little taste to what's to come, hopefully. I hope.
I hope so too. Yeah, I'm right there with you with the grill aspect on things. So, and on that literal warm note, Megan, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us.
Thank you.
And the audience on Zoom. Yes, thank you. And yeah, without further ado, I shall give it back to Chris. Thank you so much, guys.
Bye.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you so much, Tristan. That insight it's simply invaluable in really understanding the whole process. And Megan, just so you know you spent a lot of time with Tristan over the past 4 years, but we do operate the full brokerage suite. So even if you get out of the rental industry, he's probably going to be knocking on your door to help you along the way.
Good to know.
Awesome. Thanks again. All right. So before we jump into our final segment, which is bringing on some amazing kind of top talent in the developer space, I'm going to ask Amy. Amy, if you can help me out, I want to take a quick poll to gauge everybody's confidence in the Chicago luxury apartment market. Go ahead and just email events@luxurylivingchicago.com your answer, and we'll include it in the data. We'll be sharing that after the conference. Awesome.
Do it.
All right, cool. For the final segment of our event, I'm pleased to welcome a panel of some of the most respected and experienced developers. They'll share their insight on lessons learned from the 2020 pandemic, the current market, and how they're working to meet renters' demand in the continued pandemic environment. Calling Aaron back to moderate, please welcome Trisha Van Horn with Related Midwest, John Schneider with Fifield Companies, and Will Renner with Hines. This is our view from the trenches.
So I will tell you, first of all, thank you, Trisha, Will, John, for joining. When I was putting this panel together, I really wanted it to be people who were living, eating, breathing, sleeping, what it takes to provide the level of service that a Class A renter really expects. And with each of these panelists, I've had the privilege of being in the trenches with them, both before the pandemic and during the pandemic. And I can tell you that these are some of the smartest and most forward-thinking and creative thinkers that we have as owner-operators in this market. So thank you guys for joining today. We have about 25 minutes left in the program, so we want to be super efficient with time, but we'll definitely get into it. I know you guys have a lot to share as well. So let's start with intros if we can for everybody on the call. Trisha, I'll start with you, and then we'll go Trisha, Will, John for intros. So go ahead and share a little bit about yourself, the projects you're working on.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Amy, and the whole Luxury Living team. It's so nice to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm Trisha Van Horn. I'm Related Midwest Vice President of Marketing and Communications. I lead corporate and project branding, media relations, leasing and sales strategies, and general marketing across our portfolio. Some of the projects that I work on that you might know are our Related Rentals portfolio, which is 500 Lakeshore Drive, Landmark West Loop, and of course, One Bennett Park. And my development pipeline includes 900 West Randolph, which will be multifamily in Fulton Market, 400 Lakeshore Drive, which is the site of the former Chicago Spire project in Streeterville, and of course the 78, which is a 62-acre site in the South Loop that will be Chicago's next great neighborhood. One fun fact about me is that I have brought more than 10,000 units to market in Chicago. That's in the multifamily space, which is, I'm tired. I'm very tired. It was, it's been a long haul. And then finally, in honor of Women's History Month, I just want to welcome and recognize all the women that are attending this conference today and thank them for being a part of the real estate industry.
Awesome. Thank you, Tricia. Will, you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with Hines for about 7 years, worked in multifamily before that, but really most of my time at Hines, I've been lucky to spend on that little peninsula called Wolf Point. So, along with the Kennedy family and the rest of our investment group have worked on Wolf Point West, obviously now overseeing Wolf Point East. And then there's that, that little building next to us called Salesforce Tower, Chicago, that just broke ground. But we've, our sort of sandbox is the Midwest. So we also cover other smaller markets ranging from Minneapolis all the way down to Oklahoma City, where we've got a mid-rise project that just broke ground, and more to come. It's been great working in Chicago and supplementing it with some of these smaller secondary markets as well.
Awesome, thank you. John, you want to round us out?
Sure. Aaron, thanks for having me. I'm Director of Asset Management for Fifield. I oversee our portfolio here in Chicago and another project in Dallas. We have 2 lease-ups that we brought to the market in addition to our operating portfolio in 2020, one in Logan Square and one in River West called Westerly. Prior to Fifield, I spent nearly 10 years with Gem Realty Capital, a Chicago-based private equity firm focused on our portfolio of multifamily, in addition hospitality. We had some industrial assets and some office deals too. So excited to be here in Fifield in my hometown, working on in the trenches with you, Aaron, on our Chicago portfolio.
Awesome. All right, let's get into it. So it was exactly a year ago. John, Will, you probably got phone calls from me. We started talking about what's happening. What were your predictions as we went through the pandemic for commercial real estate at large? I think it's interesting for this audience to hear kind of how we were thinking back in March and what we thought about commercial real estate and specifically multifamily and the buildings. John, I'll go ahead and start with you, and then we can go around the group here as well.
Yeah, sure. No, it's interesting, right? I mean, when all the news started coming out and the world was very uncertain, our industry was really focused on rent collection. And, for a couple of months there, I mean, we sort of looked at our portfolio and our clientele and realized, I think we were pretty insulated from that. And what was beyond that, I think, I kind of misjudged in terms of the length of its impact and its overall impact to the multifamily space. But I think what was good is that we were, while I, was pretty bad at prediction, I think we were pretty good at pivoting quickly. And so, while we weren't quite seeing through the crystal ball, I mean, I think we realized very quickly that when the typical tour of being, in person really was, we were unable to do it. We refocused on really creating a robust digital asset platform and really focused on getting great footage of our actual in units so that we're able to tour remotely. And I think that has been something that we think is gonna continue for sure. And so we also recognized, as the instability of the market, really the confluence of a lot of folks leaving their leases and going, to either jumping to another building that was offering a better deal or perhaps saving money. The confluence of that and really lack of backfill opportunities created that instability in the market that we think pricing software doesn't quite handle well. So in addition, we really sort of took the reins in our portfolio away from pricing software to allow us to have a little bit more control. And so again, while we weren't great at predicting, I think we did pivot in the appropriate ways that that I think benefit our portfolio significantly.
Yep, would absolutely agree. I know on the video front, our friend Mark Zimke, who you guys just heard from, was running around filming, I think, 250 videos within a week, many of which at Logan and Wolf Point East. So, Will, why don't you talk about Wolf Point East and kind of where we were at and what your thoughts were at that time and what you expected to happen?
Yeah, I mean, our first move-in was January 1st of 20, and January and February were unbelievable is the word I would use. I felt like, we were going to set a lot of records for Hines, and certainly, March kind of, brought us back to underwriting, which in the scheme of things, we're quite happy about. But I would say the two things that we felt were going to play out was that, number one, we loved the fact that we were local, along with a Fifield and a Related. We've been here for 30 years. We weren't an out-of-town developer that just sort of outsourced everything. We love getting in the weeds. We're sort of a measure 3 times, cut once type firm, which honestly, in super frothy times, we probably miss out on a few opportunities because we're so data-driven and so analytical and relatively conservative. But in times like this, that's exactly what you want to be. And so I don't think we knew exactly how things were going to play out, but I just think, from a big picture perspective, the fact that we were local, the fact that we were detail oriented, and the fact that we love, living in the weeds, we thought was going to, really benefit us. And that's certainly proven to be the case.
Yep, agreed. Trisha, anything else to add there?
Yes, I definitely agree with the sentiments of Will and John. I think that what was very important, that very first week that, everything changed, we collaboratively met with all stakeholders, and we said, listen, we came up with a game plan. We had the support from the top down to do everything we needed on the marketing and leasing front. And I think, John, you're right. All the assets that we created in this pandemic will live on, right? They're going to benefit the property. So these were great investments overall. And I think one of the things that I do want to bring up, and we were looking at data, of course, but also we were monitoring customer sentiment, right? And the customer journey, because that all changed. And so it was very important to understand how our customers were thinking and how we could best meet them there. So those were a lot of the conversations that we had early on. Some of our predictions were true, some of them were not true. And I think, every week we had an idea that we thought was great, and then a week later we threw it out the window, right? It wasn't going to work. So that was the iteration that we went through, and it was really very collaborative to make sure that we were meeting the market where we could. And I think that was really important to early success.
Yep, all great insights, and absolutely agree. I mean, we took our entire person-to-person sales team and put them in front of a screen and trained them and taught them how to sell in a business-to-business style. And it worked. I think all of us were so pleasantly surprised at how well it actually worked and how many people would rent sight unseen. And everybody did such an amazing job being creative and innovative and collaborative across the industry. And it was really inspiring to see. So, all right, 2020, the beginning, we're done, we're a year later. What surprised you about luxury renters over the last year? Specifically, how they lived, how they reacted, how they worked within your communities. And really there, Trisha, you spoke, we'll start with you. You spoke to their psyche and customer sentiment. So what surprised you last year about the luxury renter?
So a couple of things come to the forefront for us at Related. So one that became very clear early on was our renters, the renters coming in were really prioritizing access to nature, open space, and natural amenities actually outside of our property, in addition to, of course, the wonderful outdoor terraces and everything we all have. And I think that was really important for our project that Tristan knows well, 500 Lakeshore Drive, for example, which is, an 8-year-old property, but it has that location on the lakefront. It's next to Bennett Park. It has all of those natural amenities. So we saw a big draw to views and to natural amenities. The second trend I would say that emerged that surprised us, because we did see a value-driven market coming out, but we also saw a lot of internal transfers, people that were loyal to the building, loved the service, loved how we were handling, everything in the pandemic, that said, hey, I need more space. I'm like, the four walls are closing in on me. I need a 2-bedroom. I need a 3-bedroom. So the number of people that upgraded was a wonderful thing to see. And we were so happy to accommodate them and keep them in the related family.
Yep. Will, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, one of the mantras of our firm has always been flight to quality. And whether it's multifamily, office, even industrial, essentially everything we build new, it sounds a little cliche, but we try and be market plus one, market plus two in some cases. I hadn't been with the firm long enough to see how that plays out in a down market, because I joined in 2014. And so, it's hard to argue with the fact that consumers like quality and will pay up for quality, but to actually see that take place in a soft market was pretty eye-opening to me, and obviously affirms my belief in the thesis. I mean, we've separated Wolf Point East. It's a 700 unit building. The first 500 units are our river collection. The top 200 are what we call the lake collection because of some of the views up there. And it's astounding to see some of the rents and just some of the demand for some of our highest price units in what is otherwise, a soft market. So yeah, it's totally affirmed my belief in that. And so I can't say I was surprised that that's a fact, but I think I was surprised to see it play out as strongly as it did.
Good point. I always remember we're running $4,500 1-bedrooms in the middle of a pandemic, and it was like, really? Like, people are really still paying this. This is actually happening. So it was awesome to see. John, how about you? You've had a good portfolio across the entire city. What did you see? What surprised you?
Yeah, like Will, I mean, it was a tough time. I lost a lot of sleep in bringing 2 brand new assets to market in 2020. And unlike Will, ours are in the neighborhoods. And so, for us, like, we knew that we had a lot of work cut out for us, right? We had lofty expectations, highly amenitized, best in their submarket buildings being brought in the neighborhoods. And I think I was pleasantly surprised with, the buzz that continued in those neighborhoods that really benefited our projects. We really found, when compared to, River North, Gold Coast, that really lost a lot of action during that time. The neighborhoods really allowed that the buzz that remained really allowed those projects to continue to lease. We knew they would do well. We knew we had hard work ahead of us, but we had the right product in the right location. But even through COVID and even through the challenges, the benefit of those neighborhoods and the residents who continue to value what they bring really benefited our projects. So pleasantly surprised with how the neighborhoods performed and the residents that moved there.
Yeah, really great insight. It definitely, over the years, a lot of new luxury developments in the neighborhoods. And I think that the pandemic really, again, still did pretty well in the neighborhoods, all things considered, with everything that's happened. To be at, over 90% leased at Logan, and I think Westerly's doing really well for you now too, is great news. So we're in good shape there. So shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about amenities, because I think amenities have been a hot topic all year. Recently there's a potential lawsuit that's brewing that, people are looking for rent rebates from amenities. Talk about how you handle the amenities in your building, the common spaces, COVID safety at large, because I think a lot of the renters on this call are interested. And I think in general, how we manage this was really kind of building by building, owner by owner. So interested to hear your perspective. We'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting comparing Wolf Point West to Wolf Point East. I mean, the benefit of Wolf Point East is that we were in lease up. So, we already had a ton of amenity square footage, even for a 700 unit building, but you just didn't have the occupancy you did in a stabilized building. So, the relative stress on that amenity space was less as a result. I think, like everybody in this call, of course we followed the rules, and there were some tough conversations with residents that I understand that, they're paying big rents and they couldn't use the amenities, but I think a lot of this, I mean, Aaron, you hit on this early, and it may sound a little bit cliche, but it really comes down to how well you can institute a sense of community, empathy, and respect in a building. And that's not easy to do in any high-rise building, let alone a 500 unit west or a 700 unit east. It all comes down to the people who are working on your front lines. And, they're either going to be really talented at doing that or they're not. It all comes down to the human being. It's not the website. It's not your technology. It's not, the rent you're charging. And we felt great on day one with the team we have. And I can't imagine an event that would, put focus on that more than last year. So that's what we've been pleased with.
Thank you. John, you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think, two things kind of come to mind. First is we took it seriously. And, we were, I think, we responded very responsibly, excuse me. And like Will said, those resulted in tough conversations. And I think, thankfully we have the best management companies managing our buildings, and some of them, Greystar and Bizzuto are on the call. And, really, I think having a great team and recognizing, the top talent that we have has really established those communities, made those conversations a little easier. But we then shifted to, what can we provide to our residents when they don't have access to that stuff? And some of the people on this call will recall me telling them over and over again throughout the 2020, guys, I am not pulling back on our budgets for resident events, for functions. I know it's hard, but let's spend some money. Let's find ways, creative ways to continue that community involvement. If they can't use our stair climber, or they can't, clink cocktails in our demonstration kitchen, at least we can bring those types of things to their home. So it was tough, but we did our best in a challenging environment. Very proud of our teams for continuing to provide best-in-class customer service and a community engagement.
Awesome. Tricia, you want to round us out here?
Sure. I would add to that, we at Related remain flexible and open. And certainly the shifting sentiment of our resident was, of course, amenities, wellness, cleanliness, service, all of those things that we shine at. I would say the key to how we managed amenities during this was resident communication. So whenever the city had an announcement or the state had an announcement, within hours, we also had an announcement. And sometimes it was just, we are continuing, right? Or sometimes it was, we will now be open at X%. So we really took we really tried to over communicate to our residents, from kind of an email standpoint and through the app, and then also those personal relationships. But I think our residents most felt that we were on top of all of the changing news, and we were able to react very quickly and remain flexible.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Communication was so important at that time, and I think we were all in such constant communication. It's such a great thing that we echo, and I think all of us, at least on this panel, I know having worked with all of you, that we did follow the rules, right? We had to follow the rules. We had to take this very seriously, and we really need to protect our residents and provide that home that I talked about, that Mark, Tristan, this was somebody's home, and it was really important that we maintain that. And I think that there's been some real benefit that's come out, right? Amenities on a reservation system is not always a bad thing. I think there's been some real great advantages to those sorts of things that are coming out of this. And it will be very interesting to watch what continues and what doesn't. Along those same lines, let's talk about future developments and CapEx and how we're managing that. I think that's probably one of the biggest questions right now is how, once we're out of this pandemic, because it is going to happen, we are going to move beyond this. How much is really still going to stay? Are people going to go back to the office 5 days a week? Are they really going to continue to work from home? I know none of us know the answers to that, but when we're advising developers, we're looking at this really closely and making sure that we're advising on the right common space. We're revisiting the unit and what it looks like to live in the apartment and how important that is. Trisha, I don't know if anybody has more potential units in the pipeline than you do right now. Tell us kind of how you're thinking about this and what you're looking at and how you're going about that process.
I appreciate that, Aaron. And you and I have talked about this a lot. And so we've spent a lot of time researching, discussing, and thinking about the future of multifamily residential living post-COVID. And some of the key things that we think are going to stay, and we've talked about co-working, and I think that that's the co-working space. I think that that's an obvious thing that is here to stay at some level, and different ways to do that are really necessary, both indoor and outdoor. But some of the things that Related is looking at for future developments are a little kind of less obvious, but we think very important. So this idea of creating a sense of home, and what does that mean? It means creating an environment like through art and lighting and colors and acoustics and natural materials that provides a soothing, calming palette, that maximizes daylight, that just has that feeling when you walk in. So we think that is what people want now, and we have some data behind that, and we think that is going to resonate in the future, this idea of creating a sense of home. The other thing I will say is bringing the outdoors in is another area that we think is a focus and is here to stay. So this is kind of this renewed connection to the outdoors. This is a visual connection. This is natural light. This is plantings. This is about fresh air and air quality. So those are some of the things that we are looking at that we think will help us stand out in this post-COVID environment, and that will have staying power in the next few years.
Yep. John, you want to?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, look, it's as Tricia mentioned, it's the obvious, focus, but we want to make sure we get the obvious things right. And co-working and the way that folks work in our buildings is important for us, and making sure that it is in response to the demands of the renter. We've long kind of evaluated our co-working areas and realized that large communal working areas, be it conference rooms, be it large conference tables, things like that, really weren't conducive even before the pandemic. Were really not really the greatest use of space. And so now, as we think about more folks working in those areas, making sure that they're distanced appropriately for today, but just more private for tomorrow. Because I think that that's important. And some of the fun kind of private things we've tossed around are things like Zoom rooms, with fun backgrounds like this, that, I think folks will really kind of find unique and, put a smile on their face as they have these calls, which are going to be definitely more in the future than they were in the past. And then, as Tricia mentioned, in the unit as well, from a working perspective, when we brought one of the early on things that we did at both of our lease ups this year was ensuring that, we had a space for a desk, and that we modeled it. So it could be something built in, it could be just a natural location for it, but really paying attention to that. And I think, co-working's or remote work in some ways is here to stay. And we certainly want to make sure our buildings are set up for success from that perspective.
Yep. We'll let you finish off. I know we're working through this at Wolf Point West right now and figuring out what we want to refresh there.
Yeah. So that's fun. I mean, we're doing some refreshes at West. I mean, I think everybody knows that COVID has accelerated some trends that were bound to happen anyways, but they've happened in, 12 to 18 months instead of maybe 3 to 5 years. I can remember in 2017, when we were wrapping up design of East, deciding to pivot from, a 750 square foot average at West to a 900 square foot average per unit at East. And I think some people thought we were crazy. We kind of blew off the door with co-working at East, and a few people raised their eyebrows. And then we decided to put the pool inside on the third floor with nano walls and just maximize outdoor landscaping. You can call it, there's certainly a little bit of, we didn't think the market would shift so quickly towards that, but it has. So I would say in the future, I think units are going to get bigger. I think chunk rents are going up. If I had 30 more 1-bed plus dens at East, I would, I'd be the happiest guy in Chicago right now. And so I think a lot of that stuff is here to stay. I also just feel like we could see sort of this differential between some buildings going all out on amenities and then other buildings getting really, really efficient and basically saying, look, I'm not going to have any amenities except a package room and maybe a gym. I think it's this tweener zone that COVID has proved to be not as valuable to the renter. And so I wouldn't be surprised if future product kind of went, a little bit more all or nothing than we've seen in the past.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I would love to have some more 1+ dens at Wolf Point East right now. We'd be moving rents up even more. So speaking of rents going up, we're really towards the end of time here. This is the last question. We still have a pretty decent audience. Rents are going up fast. We just saw the slides. You've seen the data. We've talked about it for the last hour and a half. What's your prediction for the rest of the year? Trisha, we'll start with you. Go ahead.
Well, we talk about this a lot, and we've seen some good results into the year so far, and some changing sentiment from our customers. So my official outlook is rational optimism. That's how I am describing my outlook right now. But I think that yes, by this summer, I think that we'll be seeing some people go back to the office, and really, we'll be looking forward to some of the things that we used to enjoy and potentially take for granted. So we're very optimistic here.
Will, next.
Yeah, I think the two biggest changes are people are going to enjoy the weather, whether you're near the lake or the river. It's going mentally, I think it's going to lead to some real stickiness and retention at buildings. And then the second thing is, the person moving from Texas and New York to Chicago is now actually able to move, and they're going to. And some of these downtown buildings, that can be 20-30% of the overall renter base. And I think that has a huge effect on aggregate upward trajectory on rents.
John?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think that all that being said, I mean, our ability as an industry to recover, which I believe 2021 will be more of a stability year, will really depend on what we do as an industry, or really here in Chicago. I mean, how do we handle 2021? I think our options for our ability to really see meaningful growth is in 2022, but it will largely depend on how strategic we are in 2021, because we will have demand. Folks will be coming back to the city, and how do we handle that demand, and how strategic are we is going to be really important.
Yep, I think you summed it up perfectly there. I think this is about strategic, thoughtful, measured rent growth over the next 3 months, certainly in busy leasing season, reevaluating where we are, and really preparing and being ready as an industry for 2022, when those material rent increases can occur, because we're hopefully out of this pandemic. So thank you guys so much, Will, Trisha, John. Thank you for joining this panel, for being our partners and supporters of LLCR. It really has been an honor to have you on today. So thank you guys for joining. So again, we're going to wrap up real quick. I can't thank everybody enough for being a part of this day and this community. A special thank you to the LLCR marketing team, produced this entire event. It continues to amaze me at what you guys are capable of and what you can create. To all the speakers, Chris, Mark, Tristan, Megan, Will, Trisha, John, thank you. Thank you so much for your time and authenticity in having these conversations. It's so appreciated. A special thank you to my wife, my business partner, my everything, Amy. She's been behind the scenes running these slides, doing all this today. It is the least of what she does for me and for our company. So thank you, Amy. We have a new exclusive development focused website. It's called multifamilyleasing.com. It's where all of you signed up for this event. We'll continue to post new content there regularly. So again, multifamilyleasing.com, go there, and whenever we have new content, we'll post some things there. Much of this content will be posted there as well. So as we close, if you take one thing away from today, it's this: we are all one community, striving for the very same things. We have the unique opportunity to provide home for so many people. If we all stay focused on that goal, we will succeed together. With that, thank you for joining us today. That concludes the Chicago Luxury Apartment Market Update 2021. Thank you for everybody who attended. Good night. For sticking around to see if there's more. That's it. It's all the content we have. That's everything.